For years, I believed property was the best way to create financial freedom as a business owner. I've since been proved wrong, and I want to help you understand exactly how you can use property in your portfolio and the role that it's supposed to play on the path to creating financial freedom. So, I love property. If anybody's watched me for a while, I live and breathe property. For our clients, there's really three ways that they build wealth. There's business. They want to build a valuable business that can be sold, and they want to accumulate other businesses. That's obviously not for everyone, but it's a great wealth building strategy that I've used personally. Two is property. We use smart leverage. We buy great quality property, and that allows us to maximize our cash on cash return. And it's a phenomenal way to build wealth. And for the vast majority of people that are on rich lists around the world, they're there because of business and property. And the third way is shares. Now, many people sleep on shares. They're afraid of shares, quite frankly, because they don't understand them or doing shares the wrong way. But the purpose of this video is all about property. So let's talk about it. Now, I used to believe that property was the be-all and end-all. When you understand the cash-on-cash returns, whereby that you have a small deposit, let's say it's 10 or 20%, you invest that into a property and you borrow the rest from the bank. And assuming that the fundamentals stack up in terms of the property being tenanted and it's a good area that gets realistic, reasonable growth, let's say, for example, total return is 5% per year. If you've leveraged 90% up on your money and you've put in, let's say, 10% into that particular property and you get a 5% return, you magnify that return 10 times. So it's a 50% cash on cash return. It's pretty substantial. You don't really get that anywhere else. And given that we're using the bank's money, it allows us to magnify our position and ultimately magnify our returns, assuming the returns are there. So the plan was, okay, you accumulate as many properties as you possibly can, and then you focus on paying them down, or you get to the end and you sell a couple of properties, you pay off the rest of the debt, and then you just accumulate the cash flow that's produced by way of the rent. But the big thing you need to consider is the return on equity that you get on that particular property or that particular property portfolio. So let's say, for argument's sake, you get a 4% yield on the property. So of the value of the asset, you get 4%. And you've got to minus real estate agents' fees, you've got strata, you've got council rates, you've got insurances, you've got other maintenance costs. Once you factor all of those things in, you might be lucky to get about a 3%, in some cases less, net return. Then you've got to pay tax on that, and then you've received your actual amount that you can live on. And when you look at the opportunity cost between the income that you receive based on the assets that you control, it's actually not the best way for you to create financial freedom. So residential property in Australia as a business owner is a growth vehicle. We focus on using it in order to magnify our asset base. But when you get to a point where you actually want to be relying on income, it's actually not the best asset to be investing in. Well, what are some potential alternatives? Well, first one is Australian blue chip stocks. We can go and get a portfolio of Australian blue chip stocks that provide us anywhere between a 5 or 6% fully franked dividend. So what that basically means is the company has already paid a 30% tax. So when we gross that up, it's a 7 or 8% gross return compared to potentially a 2% with property, 4x greater return. The second factor is that it's liquid. We can sell down a portion of those shares if we need liquidity in order to fund your lifestyle. Let's say that the income that is produced does not meet your living expenses. We can sell down a portion of the portfolio as and when we need, keeping the remainder of the funds fully invested in the market. With property, you can't really do that. You've either got to A, sell the whole property, which then means that you've probably got money above and beyond your needs sitting there in cash on the sidelines, because you just can't sell a kitchen sink to raise a little bit of cash. Or B, you've got to borrow money from the bank, and you've got to leverage against that property in order to cash out. And then that comes with an interest component that needs to be considered against that particular debt facility that you've got. Now, that obviously presents some risks. And for many people in retirement or when they achieve financial freedom, they don't want to carry those kinds of risks. So we've got to consider that every particular asset, doesn't matter if it's business, doesn't matter if it's property, doesn't matter if it's shares, all has pros and cons. Your job as a wealth accumulator is to understand the pros and cons, and then be able to understand what it is that you're trying to achieve with enough clarity that allows you to weigh up those pros and cons and choose the appropriate asset or blend of those assets in order to maximize the probability of you achieving your goal. This is not to say that property is bad or that shares are the best. Each of them is used for a specific purpose at a very specific time. And as we go through our accumulation phase, we're typically very top heavy on business and on property. And then as we get closer to that drawdown phase, we typically start shifting our assets into more liquid assets that typically pay high income with no tenants. People aren't punching holes in walls. There's no maintenance, all of these other costs that are associated with property that many people, when they're in their drawdown phase, just don't want to have to deal with. And this is the benefit of having a really great wealth creation strategy. So I hope this has been some insightful information for you guys. If you've got any questions, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I'll catch you next time.